And then another day, the people of Togo will vote to become part of the Nigerian Federation. And we will have people forget that, and he mentioned the 13 colonies that started up the federation that is the United States of America, and how they went from confederation to federation, and how these quarrels over states' rights in this process gave us that famous statement by one of the people who feared a strong center, Patrick Henry, and that famous, or those famous words, "Give me liberty or give me death." Now this is the nature of the struggle of coming to this in Nigeria, because significantly most of our states emerged from a kind of fission rather than aggression. His position is absolutely right in that the center that made them happen wonders, who are these people to challenge us? And then, very importantly, the fact that these people who are challenging for a bit of the action are premised not on things they can argue or have argued coherently about, takes the discussion into the kind of drama that we see. I intend to try and show some evidence, if you will, of why there is need for us to look at the structure of the constituent units and the center, but very, very importantly, to look beyond that. Because if we think that salvation lies just in quote-unquote restructuring, as we talk, we'll find that structure can be useful. This is why I'll turn to the structure, conduct, performance paradigm in structural economics to talk to that. But ultimately, even if we reach what we at least perceive to be optimal, we will begin to see examples. And I will give examples from both ends of the spectrum, which is why I refer to the lottery effect at one end. And maybe I should just speak to it very quickly. Many of us forget that there was a time when most of the local governments in our country, in the first couple of years of our independence, were in southern Nigeria. These were things that the subnational government did. And so in the southern Nigeria, they chose to create more local governments than the northern region chose to. So there were about twice as many local governments in the south as there were in the north. Now, by the time we went through, as Sagi pointed out, Yugoslavia's experience, borrowing especially from Brazil, with the Dasuki panel and all of that, and we created this third tier that was beginning to get a considerable part of the revenues that accrued to the federation. Local governments were attractive, and suddenly anybody who had power, his village became a local government. And we got to 774 local governments, and more than 500 are in what is called northern Nigeria. This has been significant flow of national resources there, but you and I know that the most poverty is still concentrated in that part of the country. So the money itself does not make you grow. And that's the point that needs to be made about all this quarreling about money. You take it to the other end, resource control. Resource control, as part of our lexicon, significantly entered public conversation in this country after a lecture that I gave in 2000, the first anniversary of Return to Civil Rule, Delta State Government lecture at PTI in Warri. That's when the word resource control gained currency. But look at what has happened to resource control. My home state, Delta, has gained significantly from flows. Look to its west and look to its east. Anambra, Edo, there's much better quality of life in both those states that get much less resource than that state. So it's not a matter of how much money you get. And this is what we should concentrate on when we look at these matters. But people are, you know, like Sagi said, you know, in this game thing, let me go even to something I was going to close with. I was speaking to this matter several years ago, and some gentleman, a senior person from the north, made a comment I found remarkable and said, you know what, when in the 60s, the federal government, Federal Council met, and the Prime Minister announced that Eastern Nigeria would now begin to export crude oil, which made significant resource flows. And in those days, if you remember, the subnational government was the receiving one, and maybe 50% went up to the federal government. That the Premier of the North took off to Kaduna, got there, was looking very excited, he immediately called for a cabinet meeting, and people wondered what he was excited about. He said, look, today it was announced that Eastern region will begin to export crude oil. I said, yes, but why are you excited about this? It's Eastern region that will make the money. He said, you don't understand. As they begin to export crude oil, they will not be able to have any farming anymore. They will be quarreling over the revenues, and we will need to start an agriculture policy that will enable us to feed them and take all the money from them. This fact, fable, or whatever, but it illustrates the fact that sometimes the bitterness over who is getting our money or their money defeats the real conversation that should be going on how we govern. So, the challenge should really be, why does Nigeria not work? A good part of the impunity that goes in the system that prevents the principles from making things happen as they should happen comes from a perception that you can essentially profit from using power to get a greater share of the resources to yourself. And this has not been proven in any way. And we can take a number of examples. State creation. People say that if we create more states, we will bring government closer to the people. Makes sense, it's logical, but what have we done? What we have just created is an opportunity for elite to create ways of abusing the resources of the state for themselves as politicians. More state governors, more motorcades, and so on and so forth. Western region ran from Lagos here all the way through to Asaba. In the 60s, 12 ministers or so ran all of these places. Today, we have what? 8, 9 states from Lagos to Asaba. Many governors, many commissioners. In fact, some, all they do is just appoint anybody they see on the streets. And so we have a system where we now have so much, but so little development taking place. A lot more was done with those 12 ministers than we're doing with all these commissioners and advisors and all of that. What we have done is create elite velvet ghettos. A government of politicians, for politicians, by politicians. And our federation must deal frontally with that as the central issue. We talked about local governments. We multiply local governments everywhere. And this principle of subsidiarity, which Osage also referred to, which is so critical because it is closest, it touches the people. What has happened? Local governments are completely ineffective in the country. My idea of local governments, and that's why when people say local government, my preferred place in government is in local government administration. When we get the retiring generals, the retiring permanent secretaries, the academics to go in and become the local government officials, then local governments will be able to take advantage of the know-how and know why they've built up through time, and it can work for the people. Right now, local government is not working for the people. It's a bloody waste of resources. And then, of course, one of the things that's happened as part of this way of seeing the federal structure is that we have created all kinds of parallel agencies. I think Shegu Adeniyi gave some interesting examples of the agencies upon agencies upon agencies that we are creating. And this has just become a drain pipe, parastatal's frenzy. What we need to talk more about is that we need trim governments that are delivering, that are accountable, and not just parastatals that are created, and most people don't even know they exist, but we are being drained of resources. I don't know, but I'm sure that if you go into the budget, you'll probably find some allocation for DFRI somewhere, or some agencies that died. We don't have sunset laws in Nigeria. So once you create an agency, that agency just goes on and continues to function. And even if it's long dead, some allocation is going to it, and it continues to be drained on the national. And the challenge of not asking ourselves what our governmental structures contribute. Anytime I hear this debate about whether the National Assembly is transparent, opaque, how much are they getting, I really feel sad.